So, Alec Storey, thanks very much for coming in. That's a track you're working on for your new album, right?
Yeah, that's right.
On Houndstooth?
Yes.
And that's associated with Fabric, the club in London?
Yeah, it's Fabric's label, basically.
Do you DJ there as well?
Yeah, have done quite a bit, yeah.
So you're working mostly in live, right? Or pretty much exclusively?
Yeah.
Have you always done that, or are you...?
I've used a lot of hardware and stuff in the past, but right now I'm just using everything in kind of Ableton, pretty much. So.
And have you found that your creative flow has changed, and the way that you create music has it's enabled you to do things that perhaps you wouldn't have ordinarily done? Yeah,
entirely. I mean, certainly just getting away, you know, what I'm doing now is a lot more based in this view, which is the session view. So pretty much writing whole tracks in here, as opposed to the kind of linear, kind of traditional kind of sequencer mode. So things like just jamming the arrangement and kind of not thinking about it in terms of, oh, it's after 32 bars, I need to do this and that. It's like just using my ears and sort of, you know, going back to different bits or jamming with certain bits.
And also, I can see you've got Push here as well, which is kind of centre stage, and you're pretty much using that exclusively, yeah? Yeah,
that's it. Yeah, so in the early inception of the track, it's all in here basically. So. It's not until I've kind of recorded my arrangement or whatever that I actually start to kind of go in on this pretty much. So
take me a little bit through what's going on here. I mean, it sounded quite complex, the arrangement, and yet, you know, the number of tracks is, to a Logic user anyway, seems quite low. How do you construct things together out of that?
Well, I mean, I guess it's just trying to get the most out of a sound that I can, you know, sort of keep things, you know, stripped back a little bit. So I'm not adding you know, ridiculous amounts of.
So I noticed there what we've got here. This is the sort of pad sound that you had. How did that come together?
Well, it's a sample off the Jupiter 8V, and what I like to do a lot is put things into samplers. So then I've got the kind of looping kind of capabilities that come with that. So I've just used the very simple sampler, the sort of basic one that's in live called Simpler.
Yeah.
And I've got kind of I'm sort of catching the first kind of pitch envelope at the beginning of the sample.
So you got that pitch, okay.
So and then the little loop point there.
Yeah.
So it gives it a little bit percussive sort of thing that I can sort of play around with, really.
And a lot of that's what you do as part of the performance aspect of this tune as well.
Yeah, entirely, yeah.
So do you find that Push is enabling, when you're inputting notes and doing that sort of things, that you're getting kind of to places that perhaps you wouldn't have ordinarily got to as well? Yeah,
I mean, in this case, I use just a normal keyboard, but certainly when I've got it in this, I've kind of got my clips and stuff like that. If I put it into a different scale, I may select different notes that I wouldn't have thought of. So it's kind of giving extra kind of, you know, melodic ideas, really. So.
And the one thing I've noticed about that's a kind of recurring theme through your stuff is, although you've got a solid core of things, you work very much sort of outside of that, you know, 8s and 16s and 32s or what have you. And is that, I mean, how do you start then, if that's the case? Do you start from a kind of even bar core, or?
Well, it really just totally depends on the track and what are the sounds that's kind of inspired the track. So, you know, in this case, it was that pad kind of sample, and I recorded the chords and things like that, and then everything built from there. But I guess it's a lot to do with some of the things I've kind of set up in live with sort of different kind of alternating loops and things like that. And obviously the way that I can trigger things as well isn't necessarily always on the first beat of the bar, and, you know, things like that. So it's kind of just giving more flexibility with the actual arrangement.
So I noticed, like, just in terms of that, you've got some MIDI beats as part of the core of it. How do you put those together? Are you using the step sequencer?
So using the step sequencer in Push. I actually originally recorded it as a beat thing, but then I actually adding new parts to it is I'm doing it in the step sequencer now. So
can we just have a listen to that on its own? See what. You've got the step sequencer running here.
Yeah, so I've just selected the 16th note, but it's a triplet, so. So you get some kind of interesting rhythm with that. But what I'm really loving in the new version is this per step automation. So I can just simply hold a note, in this case just a drum sound. I'm just going to go to...
So each hit becomes a completely new edit, effectively?
Yeah. So if I've got, you know, effects and things like that, I can just simply...
I know you're a machine drum head, Electron machine, so that's got to be a nice familiar ground to you, yeah?
Exactly, yeah, that was one of the things why I got an Electron machine drum, because it's got the per step automation, so now I can do this not only on drums, but also on any sound that I want, so...
Because we've got we've got the news, the notes and sequencer in 9.1, haven't we? So
yeah, exactly. So yeah, you can do obviously things that would take you ages to program. You know, obviously you've got to go to every parameter in your sort of set and do it on that particular note. But in this way, you can simply just hold down the note. And
so I mean, I noticed because you're using mostly this to deal with, you know, the interfacing with you and the program. I mean, because as we know, when you start using the computer, you've got this kind of left brain, right brain sort of wrestling match, effectively.
Yeah.
Have you found that it's enabled you to kind of forget about that a little bit?
Yeah, entirely. So, I mean, just in the case of even just creating beats, it's like I've got that particular one, then I can duplicate that, add some extra things, or even just bang, record a new sort of edit of that particular, you know, break or whatever.
Oh, so you create a pattern and then you just create another one.
And then you're creating just lots of different versions of things very quickly. So you've got ways to progress, you know, the sounds that you've got in there, and it's just very quick doing that. So,
I mean, one thing I did find when I reviewed the Push, which I really liked, but I felt it was quite closed. I mean, it's very much in the Ableton working. I have heard, though, you can incorporate VSTs and other aspects into it. You've got a trick for that, right?
Yeah, so if you're working with this is a particular sound just in Reactor. If I just want to turn it into something I can use just directly from the Push, I just Apple G, just group, so it just turns it into an instrument rack.
Oh, right, and then you've got...
So now you've got everything here, so you can kind of map whatever we want to map there. So, you know, I do this a lot. Sometimes before I've even started writing the track, I'll find out with the synth what parameters I want to turn into a macro control. And most of the time you don't really want to be using more than, say, 8, let's say. So you know, that's what it's there for. So yeah, just map whatever you want, map there. And then I'll just save that. So now, if I want to go back to the Push and just load it in here, I'll just go add track. Sorry, device. Add track. So instrument rack, so I can just go now down, and it goes to my user library here.
Right,
so,
okay.
In this case, I'll just load this one. So.
So that means it forces you effectively to create presets.
Yeah, but I think that's really good, because then you're building up your own user library of sounds, you know, because there's so many times you'll be, you know, you won't save this stuff, but it actually makes you.
And I suppose the thing is, by doing that, you've got it outside of the document. It's not just sort of buried away.
And it's all saved as well, so if you ever have any problems, you've got it still as a solid, you know, patch, you know.
So I'm getting the sense that you're a big fan of in the box, right?
Well, yes, I am, yeah.
I mean, do you have hardware stuff that you still?
Yeah, I mean, I've got lots of drum machines basically, so I still use those. But yeah, in terms of sort of synthesis and things like that, I'm finding a lot more interesting stuff going in the computer world.
I've noticed you using NI Razor there, which is additive.
Yeah, which is I'm really getting into at the moment.
And a lot of the, obviously, if you're messing with those sort of finer loop points, it's almost getting into granular world.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and certainly with effects and things like that, it's just you know, the way I'm using this now is a lot more like a piece of hardware. So you know, I'm recording all these live tweaks and things like that as I'm on the fly, because as I'm going, kind of thing.
So the thing that I've never quite got the workflow, because I'm very much a linear guy. I come from Logic, so the flip between the two processes. I mean, did you find that there was a eureka moment when you were using Ableton that you just went, right, okay, now I can. That's the transition I can make, and you got it.
Certainly, yeah, just since Live 9, really, just doing session view automation and all these kind of things, it's just really sped up my workflow, and also just got me out of that kind of linear way of thinking about arrangements, which is what I really love about it.
And so when you're working on a track, do you tend to kind of have a pass where you jam and then you record all of your movements into the arrange view, and then you flip it back and forth? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, exactly. So I'll pretty much build, you know, a basic arrangement. It might only have like 2 or 3 parts, let's say, in the arrangement, and then I'll just jam with that arrangement into the other window, and then I have something. So if we now look at this, we've got this is what I kind of jammed in a way. I've gone in on the edits and stuff on this now because this is closer to being finished. But once I've got it in this view, then I can start to do all the things that you would do in a traditional sequencer. You know, I can go in on my automation or you know, whatever's kind of in there. So let's say I've done this. The idea was in this view, then I've now taken it into this view. I've refined the idea. But if I like, you know, there's lots of sort of complex edits and things going in here, I can select a portion and then just simply right-click and it's consolidate time to new scene. So what that does, it will then consolidate everything that's in that piece of time-based information back into here. So now I have another...
You've got a whole new scene, but it's all per track as well.
Yeah, yeah. But then also with that scene, I've still got the option to jam with that as well. So I don't have to play it just in a scene. You know, I can trigger, you know, one bit of that I like, or, you know, so... It still allows, when you're doing it back into this window, it still allows you that flexibility to, you know, sort of improvise.
And so you're using push in both compositional and arrange modes? Because, I mean, traditionally, sort of up to now, most of the that sort of Ableton control has been more about the performance aspect of it rather than the compositional side. But this, you're finding you're using it for both?
Yeah, definitely for both, yeah. I mean, obviously just switching from note to session. So if I'm... you know, even just adding a little quick break, I can just go bang and just tap in something like that, or you know, whatever notes or whatever, and then just back to here. And obviously, I've set up all my sort of macro controls and sort of effects and things. I can sort of record those movements and then back in, you know. So
I'm sensing that, you know, from what we heard of the intro piece you played, I mean, there's a lot of you work with effects a lot. Yeah. And are you automating that? Are you doing that on a per clip basis, or you do it on the sort of?
So if there's certain things, I mean, obviously with that beat just then, if we just go back to here, I was adding things and obviously looking at the per step automation. So that actually has automation in it. But when I'm recording into the arrange view, I'm doing things very much on
as a performance.
Yeah, as a performance. Yeah. So I have things happening per clip. So obviously you can do the per clip automation. But then certain depends on what the parameter is and whether I think it's going to work as something I want to have going over a longer period of time. So
coming back to the track for a minute, you've also got some sort of synthesizer functions running in sampler as well, yeah?
Yep, yep. This sound here, which is just this, kind of goes high then low.
Wow, where did that, I mean, did you think I want to sound like that, or you just sort of follow your nose and kind of come up with something? And
well, yeah, I mean, I really like these kind of glide, kind of pitched kind of sounds kind of thing. And obviously as you're going up the keyboard, it exhibits different properties because it's getting shorter and shorter in its length.
So what are you using there to do that?
Well, I mean, on this particular sound, so it's got a pitch envelope,
which is
the bottom one here.
Right, okay.
So that starts very high and then drops down. Again, also here I've got an FM oscillator which comes in, which is what gives that kind of grit to it at the end. Because it's like a slow attack, you see?
And I suppose with those envelopes, you can time those against beat divisions, whereas with Portamento, it's quite difficult to get that right.
Yeah. So, I mean, with the pitch envelope, you can certainly get it to be, it's going to always be at that particular time-based.
So when you're working on this, I mean, we're presuming, is this getting close to sort of finished and ready to be mastered, or?
Yeah, it is pretty close. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So what do you put on your master outputs? What's the sort of final stage?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm just doing a home master, just to sort of play on or test on other systems, I always put this BX Digital on there and just make it mono below 300.
Right. So that's, vinyl for vinyl.
Well, yeah, just kind of getting it ready. I think it always sounds nicer anyway.
So you basically bring the very low frequencies into the middle
together, yeah.
Because if you don't, I mean, I guess people don't know about vinyl. If you have any stereo width on the bass, it affects the width of the groove, and the needle can jump out.
Yeah,
right?
That's it. But I actually just like this. That kind of sound as well.
Okay, and there's a couple other things there as well.
Yeah, the SSL compressor waves, and also the multi-band limiter.
That's for your home mastering. And then what would you do?
Well, I wouldn't. I just keep the mono maker just on, just for if I was sending it off for mastering. But I wouldn't use the other two, obviously.
Right. Okay. So that's and you mix yourself. You don't you don't work at any, and that's all completely in the box.
Yeah.
And what are you using to monitor?
I'm using the KRK VXC8s, and I've also got some little Edirol sort of reference ones.
Checking on as many speakers.
Yeah.
Good man. That's the way to do it.
Has to be done. Yeah.
So when are we going to see the fruits of this labour? When's this album likely to be out, do you think?
So yeah, first half of next year. But I'm aiming to have it done as soon as possible. I'm obviously.
So presumably once it's finished, you're going to be gigging it?
Yeah. As soon as I finish the album, I'll be working on this directly to make it into a proper live show. So.
Excellent. So how can people keep up with you and find out about what you're up to?
I'm on SoundCloud, I'm on Facebook and Twitter.
And the Houndstooth album?
Yes, also on the Houndstooth website.
OK, great. So now you're going to play us out with a bit more of the track that you opened up with. Thank you very much for coming along, Alec.
Thanks very much for having me.
And over to you.